Hey, it's Mike here, and today the Colorado River. Over the last few months in terms of water rights and the last year or so in terms of the general drying up of the river, there have been a ton of news segments on the Colorado River.
A water crisis is unfolding in the nation's southwest as the mighty Colorado River begins to dry up as a result of overconsumption and climate change.
Now tonight to what some are calling a blazing alarm to change our relationship with water.
The mighty Colorado River is not so mighty today as it was during wetter times.
The 40 million Americans who rely on the Colorado River are facing the prospect of their water running dry.
Its two large reservoirs, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, are both less than 30% full. And the mega drought affecting the Southwest means this may be the new norm.
Well, these are useful to draw attention to the issue. They rarely go into how the Colorado River water is actually divided and how it's used and where it goes and what the biggest drinkers are. Hint, it's not lawns, although I love myself an eco lawn, like xeriscaping. Look it up. So we're gonna learn the basics of the Colorado River Basin as well as why and how it no longer reaches the ocean after doing so for 6 million years, which is crazy to think about. We're also going to be looking at some foreign interests and how they are getting to use some of that water, which is sketchy. Let's hop right into some of those basics from the US Geological Survey. The Colorado River Basin is 246,000 square miles and includes states such as Arizona, California a little bit, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming. The basin, which supplies water to 40 million people, which is crazy, is divided into an upper and lower basin where the water is split evenly. In the 1930s, Lake Mead was created with the construction of the Hoover Dam, which I'm sure you know about. It creates about 1.3 million people worth of electricity, not people on treadmills, how much electricity they use, but really the first and natural reservoir is the Colorado Rockies. As it snows in the mountains, that gets stored and then trickles down through the next year. And here I am in Colorado where I came just because of the video. No, I'm joking, I was already coming here. But behind me, you can actually see the Rocky Mountains where all of this begins. And there's a little bit of snow on them right now, but unfortunately, due to climate change, even if there's normal or slightly above normal snowpack in the mountains due to drying effects on soil and evaporation, you can end up with way less flow than you previously would have had, which is just not great. But then in the 1960s, we created Lake Powell, and for the first time as that filled up, the Colorado River stopped reaching the ocean in Mexico. There was still enough natural water to periodically reach the ocean, but the last time that happened was in 1998. So far after that, it's only happened one more time deliberately, which was a little bit of a flush in 2014. This artificial pulse flow was about 200,000 homes worth of water and only lasted a few weeks until it basically dried up. It did help the vegetation out for a little bit, but according to government investigation, it didn't really help for more than a year. But the main story here is really that the Colorado River is drying up, and this is a result of just this massive man-made mega plumbing project, as well as what is a couple decades worth of drought, which has been made worse by climate change. And that level of water could be the new normal, and we again have 40 million people who rely on this, so it's not looking good. Here's some footage from Vice.
He's been making research trips on it for decades, but he's never seen the river this low.
Look at this.
Yeah, you used to be able to back a truck in here right into the water.
Is this new this year, essentially?
Yeah, it's happened within the past 6 months.
I am stunned by how horrible this is.
And looking to these charts, Lake Powell in the upper basin started off 2023 even lower than the last 4 years. Yeah, not looking great. And also from this one, Lake Mead also starting off 2023 lower than previous years. Not good. And Lake Mead is actually the US's largest reservoir, so no joke.
We just recently passed a historic low in Lake Mead. It's now at the lowest level that it's been since it filled in the 1930s. In 2000, Lake Mead was at about 95%, which was about 15 feet below that walkway right there.
Just 20 so years ago?
2000.
Wow, that's kind of impossible to picture right now, standing here.
It's dramatic.
The states have failed to negotiate how to reduce water evenly, and so the federal government stepped in, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But all of this has a lot of people worried about reaching what is called Deadpool. Yes, our only hope is Ryan Reynolds' character stepping in. No, Deadpool is actually some damn terminology of the low point that you don't want to reach. Here is a water expert talking about it on CBS.
The Deadpool is a term of art that refers to the reservoirs, the primary reservoirs, especially Lake Mead and Lake Powell, becoming so low that no water can move past the dam. So there's still some water left behind the dam, but it's below the outlet.
And as I've researched this video, I've been talking to various people about this, and a lot of their knee-jerk reactions have been, oh, well, California is literally flooding right now. There's so much rain going on. Everything's gonna be fine. Well, unfortunately, that is not caught to the same extent because it is not in the Colorado River Basin. And today's video is sponsored by Seed's lovely DS01 Daily Synbiotic. A synbiotic is prebiotics with probiotics so that they can actually get fed and do their job. And today's emphasis is on the gut-skin axis, which is super interesting. But first, you should know the basics that this little pill has 53.6 billion active cell units of bacteria in it from 24 different strains that help support health in a ton of areas such as digestive health, gut immunity, gut barrier integrity, cardiovascular health, micronutrient synthesis, and what we're talking about today, dermatological health. And I think the fact that it is coded to really get down in your digestive system where it needs to be is what sets it apart from other probiotics I've had. In the realm of skin, I previously mentioned a randomized control trial showing benefits of strains that are in seed for childhood eczema, but today I want to mention acne from this 2022 paper. Quote, "The intestinal microbiota is greatly important in the formation of acne lesions." And from this other paper also on acne in the gut, well, this is a budding area of research. Studies have shown positive results, especially with oral probiotics through the modulation of the intestinal microbiota, generating an anti-inflammatory response and restoring intestinal integrity, or through metabolic pathways such as IGF-1. Anyway, Lindy and I are enjoying taking these, and skin health starts from within. So if you'd like to try this, feel free to click the link below and use the code Mike15 at checkout for 15% off your first order. Thank you. So it's pretty clear that climate change plays a role, especially in this drought. But can we just say, oh, it's climate change, there's nothing we can do about it at this point? I believe there's a lot we can do about climate change. But in terms of this river, just throw our hands up. Well, investigating this, we have shifting rain patterns, as well as how the snowpack can melt sooner. There can be more evaporation. But how much less is the river actually providing? Well, according to the US government, flow itself is down by about 20%. This is absolutely huge. It needs to motivate action across the board, but we also have to ask, what are we doing with the 80% that is left? Where is it going? Who are the biggest users? Because it is clear that from this chart of use and actual amount that is there, as well as Lake Mead's level, we can see that generally since 2000, we have been taking out more water from this water bank than has been going into it. A lot of people have instantly gone to blame cities increasing their population for this, and we'll investigate the numbers across different states. But from a study in 2020, we can see that a lot of cities like Denver and even Los Angeles, as their population has grown, they have actually been lowering their total water use by more than 20% over recent decades. But we can next look state by state and maybe get some answers on cities. And this chart does a great job of breaking it down from upper versus lower basin. Again, they're split 50-50. Some states are clearly using quite a bit more than others. And yeah, it gets a little bit political here at some point. So let's start with the upper basin. From Colorado State University, ag water usage in Colorado is about 86% of total usage, so not Denver. And what kind of agriculture is this? This is where people are like, it's a vegan channel. I know what he's gonna say, but hey, there's a lot of good information that we're about to get into. It's not just that simple. From the USDA's ag overview of the state, yes, we can see it is dominated by hay and alfalfa, which is particularly water-guzzling animal feed. Also corn, again, mostly used for animal feed. Wheat has some good acreage there, but wheat requires a lot less water than alfalfa or corn. And this overview doesn't even count irrigated pasture because it isn't a harvested crop. So it's the very first inkling of a lot of this water is going to livestock, meat production, dairy production, etc. And again, I have not seen this emphasized on any of the news segments. And once we're through these states, we do have a good paper on the total basin irrigation usage and what crops it's going to, but we gotta cover more states. We have Utah, and you may have seen my Great Salt Lake video talking about how we're using too much water and it's drying up and causing some toxic dust. I'll link that video below, but in that research, it became clear that 82% of the state's total water is going to agriculture. Then pretty much all of that is going to animal ag, landing at about 70% of total water going to livestock. And then a lesser water user is Wyoming, but it gets even more ridiculous at 95% of its water footprint being from ag, and it is also a ranching state. New Mexico, another smaller state in the same situation with 225,000 acres of hay growing in the desert. So for that first half of the water usage, yeah, the trend is getting quite clear. We can move down to the lower basin now, and it gets a little bit more political and complicated here. We can start with California, the biggest water user. 80% of California's private water is used for irrigation. For almost 40 million people, that is quite astounding. And California's crops are a bit more diverse as it grows from this page. Over half of the nation's fruit, vegetables, and nuts. You might be saying, oh, yep, it's the nuts, it's those almonds. Well, from this UC Davis chart of water usage by crop, we can see that animal feed crops dwarf almond usage, despite California growing 80% of the planet's almonds. Water almond concerns have now been blown out of the water. No, I still think they need to make that more efficient, but it's worth looking to this Pacific Institute report, which found that, yeah, water usage is actually worse for alfalfa and pasture per acre than almonds. And of course, there's a lot less acres of almonds. And finally, they have a chart showing that feed crops are the worst financial use of water out of pretty much anything that is grown in California. And next we can move to Arizona. And why is it that Arizona is using almost, a comparable amount of water to California despite having less than 1/5 the population? Oh my gosh. And this is where things get political, because Arizona was the biggest water loser after states could not negotiate well how to distribute water. The federal government came in and said, you get a 20% water cut roughly.
Yes, Arizona is getting hit the hardest of any state, with some painful reductions in our allotment of Colorado River water. But our neighbor California is not facing any mandatory cuts.
And in Arizona's case, from their Department of Water Resources, 72% of their water pie goes to agriculture, brought actually down from 90% at one point, according to the government. And Arizona water usage has been a little bit shifty, as CNN reported. Yeah, about 80% of the state has no laws overseeing how much water corporate megafarms are using, nor is there any way for the state to track it. Oops. Thankfully, there has been a little bit of tracking over the years from this 2017 report. Once again, the main one is alfalfa and other animal forage. Cotton looks like a pretty good contender there, but yeah, alfalfa uses about twice as much water as cotton. So, Arizona alfalfa would be equivalent to about 600,000 acres of cotton in water use. We have almost 500 million pounds of red meat and more than 4.2 billion pounds of milk grown in the desert, as the governor bragged. And this is where it gets even more political and muddied, because a lot of this animal feed is actually grown by, international megacorporations, like one from Saudi Arabia. Yeah, it appears they drained their aquifers and now they're trying to keep their dairy industry going. And one politician even said, Saudi Arabia has stated their intention to rob Arizonans at the gas pump, but they are already stealing our water. Yes, the second largest land renter in the state is actually a alfalfa growing subsidiary for a massive dairy corporation called Almarai.
But here in Saudi Arabia, Almarai, the largest integrated dairy business in the world, has 7 farms producing 1 billion litres of milk per year. We've come to their Al Badaya farm, 46,000 dairy animals, 22,500 milking cows. What an operation.
And that dairy corporation has apparently been getting some pretty sweet deals on water from Arizona. Heck, even now Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays ran on a 16-point plan, including investigating what they called the Saudi water grab, claiming they got water for free. So yeah, things are getting pretty complicated and it's getting a little dark out, so we're gonna wrap up the states with Nevada. A lot of people have been blaming Las Vegas, so much so that they've actually had to lower the amount of lawn watering and things like that in the city of Las Vegas. And despite only using 4% of the lower basin's water, they were a state that was chosen to have to cut some water usage by about 8% from the federal government. And in terms of Las Vegas, from Smithsonian, the city is one of the largest in the Colorado River Basin, but its share of the river is relatively small. How small? Well, apparently 70% of Nevada's water goes to agriculture once again. While the state has horrible water use tracking, looking to the USDA's overview, it's clear that virtually all agriculture in this state is animal agriculture and feed. And to back that up from a crop specialist from the University of Nevada, yeah, 90% of the crops in Nevada are alfalfa and other grass hays. And this is an example where it's just ridiculous in that they use 70% of water for animal ag, yet looking to the charts, I had to calculate this one out. Livestock only make up 0.2% of their economy. All right, now let's hop to a really exhaustive, pretty recent study from 2020 in the journal Nature Sustainability. Their conclusion, quote, "We find irrigation of cattle feed crops to be the greatest consumer of river water in the western United States, implicating beef and dairy consumption as the leading driver of water shortages and fish imperilment in the region." That sounds like it's just talking about the West. Well, what about the Colorado River? Well, in particular, quote, "Irrigation of cattle feed crops, particularly alfalfa and other hay and haylage," love that word, "quickly becomes the biggest driver of flow depletion for most of the river's length, continuing all the way downstream to the US-Mexico border." Yep, from this chart, about 80% of all of the Colorado River Basin's water goes to irrigation, and the vast majority of that is feed crops. And this is where I don't think we should just go ahead and blame Saudi people or Chinese people or whatever, because across the actual basin itself, the main concern, according to the study, is, quote, "Beef consumers living in the Los Angeles, Portland, Denver, and San Francisco metropolitan areas bear the greatest responsibility for these hydrological and ecological impacts." In other words, maybe we should have been asking, who's been eating the Colorado River dry? Looking down at all of those crops, it's hard to get an exact percentage of total water usage from animal ag. I actually went insane trying to make my own spreadsheet estimating livestock's total percentage by state, going through every state, and landed at 55% of the total basin. But again, that didn't even include most states' irrigated pasture because it isn't a crop. And get this, as the former manager of the Western Water Program for the US Geological Survey, John Bredehoff, told ProPublica, yeah, half of the water in the West is used to raise cows. Then joking about, yeah, of course we have a water shortage. And to corroborate that, from this Pacifica Institute report, animal feed uses 60% of irrigated land area in the basin. Multiply that by our 79% from the Nature paper, and we have like 47.4% of all of the water, but probably more because alfalfa is so thirsty, and that is based on area. So with multiple sources, livestock is drinking about 50% of the Colorado River's water. Applying that to this consumption chart, we can see that without livestock in the equation, there would really be no water crisis in the West. And why is agriculture able to use so much? I mean, shouldn't we just lower agriculture usage and fill up those reservoirs to be safe? Well, as this High Country News article mentions, in most cases, farmers actually have senior rights to the bulk of the water. And of course, of all the crops grown in the region, alfalfa and hay fields collectively are the thirstiest. They also put it really well, saying that alfalfa is like an anti-reservoir. Very accurate. In the end, it appears that the desire to eat meat as well as dairy products is the leading driver of the water crisis in the West. I mean, we could say that climate change and animal agriculture might be neck and neck, but if climate change is roughly 20% of it and 50% of our use is animal agriculture, then animal agriculture likely the leading cause of the water crisis in the West. And at this point, it almost goes without saying that plant protein sources are wildly more water efficient per gram of protein, especially those legumes/beans. Shifting to those clearly would help us out. So yeah, the future of the West's water depends on how much we rein in animal agriculture. We're talking about the water of 40 million people here. I love my transitions to see it at the And if you would like to try Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic, you can of course click that link below. Use the code Mike15 for 15% off your first order at checkout. All right, I hope you enjoyed this journey to Colorado with me, learning all about the Colorado River Basin. And let me know down below what you think about all of this. Are there any points I missed? And feel free to like and subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
So it will significantly reduce the amount of power that's available from hydroelectric dam.